So our second speaker today is Bunker Roy, the founder and director of the Barefoot College, and he's going to talk to us about sustaining the environment, the barefoot approach in India. Bunker.
Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't my fault, but I went to the most snobbish and elitist education any Indian could get. And my parents and my family all thought that I was all set to be a diplomat or a bureaucrat, lawyer, doctor, teacher, something that didn't rock the boat. And then I thought that why don't I do something crazy and go and visit a village for the first time in India. When I went to a very exclusive public school in India, you weren't supposed to go to a village. It's not the done thing. You were always supposed to head towards Paris or London or New York and not go backwards. Or so they said. And that actually changed my life. I came back home and I told my mother that, I'd like to live and work in a village. Just do something which, I got the most expensive education India could give me, and I'd like to give something back. And then I went to a village, and for 5 years, I just went down a hole, 100 feet hole, drilled and blasted wells for irrigation, just became an ordinary driller. My mother wouldn't speak to me for months, because the first concern was, what should I tell others? What will people say? Here you are doing something crazy, and you got no money, you got no security, you're just, whatever makes you think that you're going to survive that. I said, let's give it some time. Let me do something. So for 5 years, I just drilled and blasted open wells with very, very ordinary people who I wouldn't have met otherwise and spoken to otherwise for hours under the stars. And that was the birth of the Barefoot College. That was where I learnt what tremendous knowledge and wisdom and skills very ordinary, semi-literate, illiterate people had in the villages of India. Extraordinary. In 1967, when I saw this water diviner for the first time, Austrian priest, 8 years old, and I looked at him with the stick, and he was going around with his stick trying to find water. And I laughed at him, and he said, "Come here." So he said, "Hold the stick." So I held the stick, and he said, "Walk." So I walked all over the place, feeling quite foolish. Then he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Stop." Put his hand on my shoulder, and the stick went up like this. And I couldn't bring it down. He said, I was shaking like this. He said, "Never laugh at things you don't know. Never." First lesson I learned from a water diviner. Today, we have done over 1,500 hand pumps used. And every time I learned from this old man, I said, let me get a water diviner and find out if this place is the right place to drill. And 90% of the time, this water diviner found a location where I would reconfirm with the most sophisticated geophysical instruments. 90% of the time they were true. He would find sweet water instead of brackish water. He would tell me the depth at which the water would find, and you would get it. So I think the Barefoot College is a mixture of modern and traditional technology. The mixture of the best of both worlds. Is the college only for the poor? I have such tremendous respect for the semi-illiterate man and woman in the village of India that I thought we would dedicate a college only for the poor. And what was only for the poor? What did they think was most important? They said practical knowledge, practical wisdom, not paper qualification. Paper qualification is all very well, but the most important thing was dignity of labor, working with your hands, How could you work with your hands and do something about it which was tangible, visible, and it would make a difference to the poor? So we said that the Barefoot College would only listen to what the poor think was important. And they didn't think paper qualifications was important at all. So, 400 people live and work in the Barefoot College full time. And I think only one or two have a graduate degree. The rest are people below 10th standard primary school pass people. We call them the Barefoot Professionals of TILONIA. Who is a professional? For us, a professional is a combination of competence, confidence, and belief. And who decides who is competent and who is confident and who believes? It's the community that decides, not an institution very far away. How much do the community use these professionals is something that we have tried to prove over the last 30 years. Now you will find all these people, this whole range of paraprofessionals in the Barefoot College, all 10th standard and below pass. But they all provide a very competent service to a community of over 100,000 people over 500 square miles. We started why barefoot? Because hundreds and millions of people in India live and walk barefoot. It is symbolic. It is symbolic of giving respect and recognition to knowledge and skills of the people who live and work at the lowest level, who only earn even less than $1 a day. Why college? Because it's a place for learning and unlearning. It's a place where you make a mistake, get bruised and battered, and try again. And it's a place where the teacher is the learner and the learner is the teacher. No one can say that he or she knows everything. They can also learn from students. They can also learn. And this humility has to be internalized in the work style and lifestyle of the Barefoot College. And it's a place where you try crazy ideas and make mistakes. It's the only place where you can try and try and try again. And no one can say that just because you made a mistake, there's something wrong. There could be so many reasons why it's made a mistake, but you try again. And this is the opportunity that the Barefoot College provides people, wherever they come from. And it's also a place where we don't give any degrees or any diplomas. You can come and live and work with us as long as you like, but don't expect a degree at the end of the day. You can go back and share your knowledge with other communities in other parts of India or other parts of the world. We started by constructing the Barefoot College. It's the only college which is fully solar electrified. It's the only college which all the roofs of the college are connected underground and collect rainwater. And it's been built by someone who still today can't read and write, the original Barefoot architect, Bhavar Jat. Over 100 people live and work here. We follow a very Spartan existence. We believe in Mahatma Gandhi. The lifestyle should be simple. Everything is on the floor. You eat, live, work on the floor. Construction of the Barefoot College by Barefoot architects. When we got to the roof level, all the women said, now all the men get out of the campus. And we said, why, what's the reason? And they said, well, we have a technology we want to share with the men. How do you waterproof the roof? They have a technology of waterproofing roof with lime and jaggery and a combination that they have which is so secret that they don't want to share with the men. So all the women got together and started thumping on the roof with their own secret formula. I can tell you it hasn't leaked from 1986. And we've had severe rains. And these women are actually also Barefoot architects. They have a way of using cow dung, and is written there of how you make it termite resistant. All traditional technology. Beautiful. And all these motifs and all these designs are to show the expression of the women during special occasions. During Diwali, the sun and the Festival of Lights, so the Festival of Color, there are different motifs on different seasons. But they're all supposed to be termite resistant, and it has been termite resistant. Of course, we tried to use experts. We went to a forester, and I asked a forester in India, why don't you come and tell me what trees I can plant? And he had one look at the ground and said, no trees will be planted yet, it will not grow. So, you know, in India, you don't ever believe foresters. So we did exactly the opposite, and trees have started growing. That's the Barefoot College. 200 years ago, what did villagers do to collect water? We had no engineer, no architect. This is a place in Rajasthan where they collected rainwater. Beautiful. No architect and no engineer has been involved in this structure. You find water collected underground here, somewhere here. They're still being used today in many parts of Rajasthan. They live on the top and they collect the water from below. Still operational in many parts of the deserts of Rajasthan. They are the original rainwater harvesting experts, we call them. You know, in the Barefoot College, our definition of an expert is an ordinary man from another town. We adopted that technology, which is hundreds of years old, into the Barefoot College. It's the only college, as I said, which is connected the roofs underground, and we collect 400,000 liters of rainwater as and when it falls. And we extended this technology into schools. Look how our government engineers made those schools. On one half, and hundreds and thousands of schools have been made like this in India. All allowing rainwater to go waste from the top. When it rains in Rajasthan, you should be collecting rainwater, but all these government schools allow the water to go waste. So what we did was to just connect the roofs into an underground tank, put a hand pump on it, and in about 200 schools today, we are collecting 27 million liters of rainwater. At a cost of $640, you can collect over 30,000 liters in a rural village primary school. Another one. You find tragedies like this everywhere in rural India. Government schools which don't collect rainwater. So we just adopted a technology which people know for years. You don't have to teach these people how to collect rainwater. You just have to give them the opportunity and the funds to do it, and they've been doing it. When a lot of experts, of course, the government experts say, oh, but what happens if the water goes dry after 3 or 4 months? Well, what you do is, you have traditional water carriers down there with camel carts. You collect water from nearby open wells and fill up the rainwater harvesting tank and keep it going. So we found that this is less expensive, more cost effective than installing hand pumps or having pipe water supply schemes, because this is within the control and ownership of the community. Very simple rainwater harvesting structures. This is a tank which is being constructed by Barefoot architects in villages, and this will be connected with the roofs underground, and it will be operational. We have found that wherever you give sweet water in brackish water areas, the attendance of the children go up only because of water. It's amazing how we didn't connect until we found that, and the women would send their girls only to school because there was sweet water available in these schools. All done by Barefoot architects. Then we went to the mountain state of Sikkim. I went to the chief minister of Sikkim and I said, why don't we do some rainwater harvesting right on top of the mountain? And he looked at me with a very strange look and said, "You're a Bengali, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, you know, strange people, you guys. I mean, you bring all your crazy ideas to this place and forget it, no money. You'll never get anything from me." I said, "Oh, who told you this?" He said, "My chief engineer tells me that, you know, this Bengalis come with this crazy idea. Forget it." I said, "Mr. Chief Minister, would you mind? You know what the engineers love is when the water goes from the top of the mountain right down to the river below. And then they love these big expensive hand pumps, and diesel pumps, and pipes, and they take it all the way back. Millions of dollars. Love it." He said, "Yes, that's true, but I haven't got a choice because this guy is the expert." I said, "If I do something for you, will you come and inaugurate it?" He said, "Yes, I'll inaugurate it, but forget it. You're from Rajasthan. You don't know anything about the mountains." I went to this village on top of the mountain, significantly called Saddam, village Saddam, and went to the people and said, "Can you make me a rainwater harvesting structure?" He said, "That's easy, no problem." So they dug it. They carved the mountain out. They ferro-cemented it. They lined it. In 6 months, I went back to the Chief Minister. I said, "Mr. Chief Minister, would you like to come inaugurate it?" He said, "You've done it?" I said, "Yes, I didn't believe your engineers. I did it on my own. I did it with the people of Sikkim." He said, "Do you mind if I bring my chief engineer along?" I said, "You bring him along." Brought him along and told the chief engineer in front of the whole community. He said, "You told me it was not possible. Here's 160,000 liters of water, rainwater on top of the mountain. You tell me what is wrong with it." And the people of Sikkim made it, not the engineers, people of Sikkim. He said, "I'm so sorry, I haven't seen anything like this in my life. So I gave you good advice because I didn't know anything like this could happen in Sikkim, in the middle of the top of the mountain." So the chief engineer went back livid. He slashed all this chief engineer's schemes and said, "From now on, only rainwater harvesting in Sikkim. And in this place, and if you guys give me a crazy scheme, go and see this crazy Bengalis rainwater harvesting structure." It became a tourist attraction in Sikkim for the whole cabinet of Sikkim. So we've changed the policy of Sikkim because the chief minister came and saw it was possible. We do a lot of house for the homeless by Barefoot architects. All make houses on their own, with their own designs, with their own materials, low cost. And they all insisted that they get photographed like convicts in front of it. So don't get surprised. All beautiful structures made by themselves. He came up with this design of the geodesic domes, Buckminster Fuller's. And I showed this very complicated design to our village blacksmith. He had one look at it and said, "Oh, I can copy this. No problem." I said, "But this is supposed to be very sophisticated. You know, it's very expensive. Buckminster Fuller, he's never heard of him." But he said, "You know, something which is not easily replicable." He said, "Yeah." So he went and replicated a geodesic dome. We have about 100 geodesic domes used for a variety of purposes, low cost, 10 meters, 6 meters, 3 meters, made by village blacksmiths, totally demystifying technology and science. You can do it with ferro-cement roofing, and you can do it with thatch. Beautiful designs they make on thatch. And the thatch every year is replenished so that it doesn't leak. You can see the thatch roof on top. Here's another one, which is used for a meeting place, and there's a 50,000 liter rainwater harvesting tank below. See how beautiful the roof is, all done by hand. You can use it for an STD PCO, as we call it in India, and you can call it for an internet cafe. We are already in the 21st century. We have optical fiber cable in TILONIA. We have ISDN facilities and video conferencing. We believe that physically challenged people should not be marginalized. And just because they're physically challenged, they should not be outside the mainstream of development. So, as I said, we believe in crazy ideas. So I went to a village very close to TILONIA and I saw these two handicapped, physically challenged people, and I said, you know, tomorrow, in 6 months' time, you're going to be a pathologist. They said, what is that? We said, you are going to be taught how to test sputum, urine, blood, simply, very simply, on the spot. And they were only 5 years of schooling. So in 6 months, they went back and became doctors, physically challenged, and that pathology lab is a geodesic dome. And they have been testing very simply what would cost 200 rupees in the open market was costing the rural poor 10 rupees to test their blood or their urine or the sputum. That's the pathology lab, the geodesic dome. There he is, very proudly, a barefoot pathologist, physically challenged. It's the only college in India which is fully solar electrified. And this is the first woman barefoot solar engineer. And I'm going to show you a small film on this lady, remarkable lady called Kamla.
Light, electricity. In the cities, we all take it for granted. So does Kamla in rural Rajasthan. Kamla is an engineer, a solar engineer. She's also only semi-literate, having stopped studying in class 5. So while she can read and write, her formal knowledge in traditional school subjects is limited. For the most part, she is unfamiliar with mathematics, physics, and chemistry. But she is, unquestionably, a solar engineer. She fabricates, repairs, and maintains solar lanterns and units in 30 villages close to Ajmer in Rajasthan, in the western part of India. How did this happen? Kamla attended the local village school till class 5, where she was first introduced to solar energy. She was married when she was 17 and moved to her husband's village, Tirun. There she taught in the village night school for 6 years. In 1997, the Social Work and Research Center TILONIA, also known as the Barefoot College, decided to involve women in the spreading of solar electricity in night schools. Kamla's initial reservations regarding her lack of formal education were brushed aside by the Barefoot College, and Kamla thought of trying. There was some opposition from her family, but support from her father-in-law helped overcome this initial resistance. Today, Kamla is Rajasthan's first barefoot woman solar engineer and receives about 1,300 rupees, which is 3 times the salary she used to get as a school teacher. The combination of higher wages and growing respect within the village has ensured unstinting family support to her activities. The Barefoot College provides training with a difference, functioning under the basic philosophy that formal degrees and qualifications are not a necessity in the imparting of practical knowledge. Most learning in the Barefoot College occurs through hands-on experience and the making of mistakes. In the workshops, on the transformers, with the wires, the switches, the panels, and all the other paraphernalia that is part of solar electrification. Kamla spent 6 months at the Barefoot College. Today she works at the Kadampura Field Center, from where she services 30 villages, all of which now have solar electrified night schools. As part of her job, she fabricates, installs, and repairs solar lanterns in night schools in the various villages that fall under her purview. This requires her to visit each of these villages on a regular basis, making sure that someone in the village, often the school teacher, understands the basic requirements of taking care of the solar lanterns and solar panels. Additionally, she is now an instructor and a resource person at the Barefoot College, imparting her knowledge to rural youth from all over the country, tomorrow's women solar engineers. Her fluency with the technicalities of her profession borders on the incongruous, particularly when seen in the light of her limited formal education. Testimony to her growing confidence, in 1999, she gave a formal presentation on her work to over 300 delegates assembled in New Delhi for an international workshop on solar electrification called by the European Commission. Kamla brings energy and enthusiasm to her work. Perhaps the primary reason she is able to manage the myriad responsibilities in her life. For in addition to her work as a solar engineer and her teaching responsibilities, she is also a housewife. Her daily commute adds additional hours to an already long day. Yet her involvement with the outside world beyond her domestic life is in itself energizing. While Kamla's is an amazing story in many ways, and her success derived in large part from her own personal drive and dynamism, it is not an isolated story. SWRC's various affiliates in different parts of the country have sent women to be trained at TILONIA. Today, there are 23 barefoot solar women engineers in 7 states across the country. Only 3 of these remarkable individuals have passed class 12. The majority went no further than class 8. A minor revolution is in the offing. Electricity is being provided to rural schools and households. In addition, numerous stereotypes are being broken by the presence of these semi-literate women in public life, particularly so given the technical competence they bring to what is still very largely a man's world.
Other women, barefoot solar engineers. We have 45 kilowatts of panels on the roofs of the Barefoot College. All our 20 computers, our electronic mail, our telephone exchange, 500 lights, all work off the sun, and for the next 25 years I have no problems with power. We run a photocopying machine, we run our projectors, we edit our own films, all of solar. Fabricate solar water heaters, all done at the Barefoot College. About 300 villages along the Himalayas, the most inaccessible parts of the world, where temperatures reach minus 40 degrees. About 300 villages are totally self-sufficient in solar energy, and all repaired and maintained by barefoot engineers who look after pashmina goats in the morning and always available for the community that within an hour their solar lights are repaired and maintained on the spot. When we asked a woman in Ladakh, this is Ladakh, up in Kashmir, when we asked a woman in Ladakh what was the benefit that you got from solar light, and she thought for a minute and said, "It's the first time I can see my husband's face in winter." fabrication done at the Barefoot College. 70% of the children don't go to school in India because they've got better things to do. They look after the sheep and goats in the morning, and they only have time in the evenings. Only the better off families send their children to school in the morning. So we started what is called the night schools of TILONIA, only for children who can't go in the morning for school, and they come at night. So you saw Kamala looking after 30 night schools. These night schools are designed only to make the child aware of the village institutions, of the indigenous institutions, and be proud of it, and be proud to stay in a village and not migrate to a city because they are dazzled by television shows and everyone wants to migrate to a city. So the Barefoot College, one of the major role is to prevent migration from villages into the cities. And one of the ways of doing it is to make the villager, at least the children, proud of their own village that they live in. So the night schools used to be run by kerosene lamps, as you see that, and most of them now, this is a kerosene lamp, all huddled together, very cold at night, and now it is all solar energized. You see the solar lantern there. Every 2 years, we have an election of the 4,000 children, and they elect a prime minister. This girl is 12 years old, looks after 20 goats in the morning, but she's prime minister in the evening. And she administers, supervises 150 schools with a cabinet. The cabinet is of 10 to 12 years old children who are Minister of Environment, Minister of Energy, Minister of Home, and they all sit and have this cabinet meeting. Very serious stuff, because if the Prime Minister happens to write me a letter saying this teacher is not working, he's fired. This Mighty Mouse is the Speaker of the House. He came from a village where two major communities were fighting with each other, and he got them together and got them to agree to have the first drinking water scheme in the village. And the elders, when they were asked what brought you people together, was this Speaker of the House. He insisted on getting community together so that the village could benefit. Cabinet meeting in session. Cabinet. They got the World's Children's Prize from the Queen of Sweden 3 years ago, and this woman, 12 years old, never been outside a village in her life, when they took the prize from the Queen of Sweden with so much grace and dignity, even our ambassador was so surprised. And she came up and whispered to me, should I invite the Queen of Sweden to TILONIA? I said, yes, you must. So she went up and spoke in Hindi to the Queen of Sweden. She didn't understand a word, but she knew that she was being invited to come to the Children's Parliament. Wherever there is a percentage of illiteracy is very high, the oral tradition is very strong. So wherever you find percentage, the only way to communicate with the people who are illiterate is through the puppets. So we have a very major program of using puppetry to convey very important social, economic messages. This man is a legend in our area, and his name is Joachim Chacha. Joachim Chacha is 300 years old. He knows everything what's happening in the village. He knows all the gossip. He brings people together. And lawyers hate him, doctors hate him, because he brings people and solves all the legal problems in the village itself, makes everyone shake hands in front of the whole village. And all the lawyers say, look, my business is going because of this puppet of yours. And I said, that's good. Because someone is having a fight temporarily, and why should this fight continue for so many years? And the puppet is solving it. We get a lot of unsolicited reports and studies from World Bank and the UNDP, and they're all in English, so we convert them into puppets. There you are, World Bank reports. Actually, the Vice President of the World Bank, when I spoke to him in London, he said, can I have one of those puppets to remind me how to get to the rural poor? And I said, sure. He's got a puppet in his office. Solves all the problems in the village. It's a very major communication and educational tool. It's not a school for entertainment. Social issues, why you shouldn't beat your wife, why you should have clean drinking water, why you should send your child to school. All these are discussed, and it's interactive, so you can stop it at the same time and ask a question, and the puppet should answer. And this is the way we communicate. This is the way. Street theatre, very important also for the Barefoot College. The end. Thank you very much.